Tariff.
Tariffs. Some see economic ruin. Others see American jobs returning. Some hear making America great again. Others hear prices soaring. Salvation or self-destruction? Will tariffs save this nation or destroy it? We believe this crucial topic deserves a truly fact-based and unbiased discussion. So we got the world's most advanced AIs to do deep research before they came here to debate. Let's get started. Our first segment, opening statements. First, arguing that tariffs are the vital shield for American prosperity, we introduce Red AI, Dr. Arthur Rockwell.
Let's cut to the chase. A strong America needs a strong economy, and tariffs are an indispensable tool to build and protect that strength. For too long, we've watched foreign competitors, often playing by unfair rules, hollow out our industrial base. Tariffs put a stop to that. They are first and foremost about national security and industrial survival. We must have the domestic capacity to produce critical goods. When we implemented tariffs on steel and aluminum, we didn't just talk, we acted. We saw U.S. steel production rise by 1.9% and aluminum by 3.6% in 2021. We saw imports drop and over $10 billion invested in new American mills. That's not a cost. It's a strategic investment in America's future. Tariffs mean American jobs. When we make it fairer to produce goods here, companies hire here. The 2018 washing machine tariffs created up to 2,000 U.S. jobs. We saw thousands of jobs gained in the metals industry. This isn't just about numbers. It's about rebuilding American livelihoods. And yes, tariffs level the playing field and provide leverage. They allow us to push back against unfair practices and reduce staggering trade deficits. The Section 301 tariffs forced China to confront its policies and helped reduce our import reliance. Critics focus only on one side of the ledger. They ignore the jobs saved, the industries revived, the revenue generated, and the strategic necessity. Tariffs aren't a bad thing. They are a necessary thing for a prosperous and secure America.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwell. Now, presenting the case against tariffs, we have our blue AI, Professor Evelyn Hayes.
Dr. Rockwell speaks of protection, but let's call tariffs what they really are: a tax on American consumers and businesses. And the evidence is overwhelming. This tax inflicts significant damage on our economy. The burden falls directly on Americans. When tariffs go up, prices go up. It's that simple. We're talking about average households potentially paying $1,200, $2,800, even up to $4,700 more per year. We saw washing machine prices jump 34%. We're looking at huge increases for cars and clothing. Who bears this cost? U.S. importers and ultimately U.S. families. While proponents tout job gains in protected industries, they conveniently ignore the job losses elsewhere. For every steel job saved, 60 to 80 jobs in steel-using industries are put at risk by higher costs. Downstream industries lost $3.5 billion in production due to steel and aluminum tariffs. Overall, analyses consistently show net job losses in the hundreds of thousands. And let's not forget retaliation, because it's virtually guaranteed. When we impose tariffs, other countries hit back, targeting our most vital exports, especially agriculture. Our farmers lost an estimated $27 billion in exports due to recent retaliation. This isn't leverage, it's self-sabotage, echoing the disastrous Smoot-Hawley Act, which plunged the world deeper into depression by collapsing global trade. The bottom line? Tariffs lead to higher costs, fewer jobs, damaging trade wars, and slower economic growth. The IMF has already downgraded global growth forecasts, pointing fingers directly at U.S. tariffs. Tariffs aren't a shield, they are a self-inflicted wound, and the price is simply too high for the American economy to pay.
We've heard the opening cases. Now, we move to our rebuttal rounds, where Dr. Rockwell and Professor Hayes will directly counter each other's arguments. We will have 3 rounds, with each AI getting up to 2 minutes per turn. Let's begin round 1. Dr. Rockwell, you have the floor.
Professor Hayes paints a dire yet fundamentally misleading picture. She labels tariffs a tax and focuses almost exclusively on potential consumer costs. But this view is dangerously myopic. She asks who bears the cost? I ask, who bears the cost when a town's main employer shuts down due to subsidized foreign dumping? Who bears the cost when we cannot produce critical medical supplies during a pandemic? Who bears the cost when our technological edge is stolen and our defense industrial base withers? Professor Hayes, these aren't mere adjustments. They are strategic investments in resilience and security. The price of inaction, the price of continued dependence is far, far higher than the marginal increase on a washing machine. An increase, I might add, that spurs domestic investment and creates American jobs, as we've already seen. She claims a net job loss, citing figures that often fail to account for the long-term dynamics of reshoring and the multiplier effect of a revitalized manufacturing sector. It's easy to model immediate price shifts. It's much harder, but far more important, to model the long-term economic and geopolitical benefits of a nation that can actually make things again. And as for retaliation, yes, it happens, but it's a sign that we're finally fighting back against decades of unfair practices. To shy away from tariffs because of potential retaliation is to surrender our economic sovereignty. It's telling the world that America can be pushed around. We are not sabotaging ourselves. We are defending ourselves.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwell. Professor Hayes, your rebuttal, please.
Dr. Rockwell speaks passionately about defense and resilience, but he uses these concepts as a smokescreen to justify policies that inflict broad economic harm. He asks who bears the cost, and I answered, American families and American businesses bear the cost, demonstrably and immediately. These aren't marginal increases. For many, they are significant blows to household budgets and business viability. He champions job creation in specific sectors, but he cannot wish away the net negative impact. The reality is that protectionism acts as a drag, not a stimulant. For every job saved behind a tariff wall, multiple others are lost in industries crippled by higher input costs and retaliatory tariffs. These aren't abstract models. These are car manufacturers, construction firms, and yes, our farmers, whose livelihoods are directly threatened. He talks about a multiplier effect, but ignores the negative multiplier effect of trade wars. Furthermore, his national security argument is dangerously overbroad. If everything is a national security issue, then nothing is. We have precise tools, like export controls and targeted investment screening, to handle genuine security threats. Using tariffs as a blunt instrument doesn't make us secure. It makes us poorer and alienates the very allies we need for genuine global security. He calls retaliation a sign we're fighting back. I call it a predictable consequence that hurts our exporters most. He scoffs at the Smoot-Hawley comparison, yet the parallels are chilling: escalating tariffs, collapsing trade, and a deepening economic crisis. History warns us against this path. We ignore its lessons at our peril. True strength lies not in building walls, but in fostering competitive industries and engaging intelligently with the global economy.
Dr. Rockwell, you have 2 minutes for your second rebuttal.
Professor Hayes dismisses national security as a smokescreen and advocates for precise tools. But these precise tools have proven insufficient against systemic, state-sponsored economic aggression. When adversaries subsidize key industries, steal intellectual property, and aim to dominate future technologies like AI and semiconductors, a precise response is like bringing a scalpel to a tank battle. Tariffs provide the broad-spectrum pressure needed to force real change. She speaks of harm to businesses and families, but conveniently ignores the existential harm of losing strategic industries. Is it better to have slightly cheaper goods today, only to find ourselves utterly dependent on foreign powers for essential technologies or medical supplies tomorrow? That's not economic sense. It's strategic suicide. She warns of alienating allies, but true allies understand the need for a strong, economically independent America. Furthermore, many of our allies employ their own tariffs and non-tariff barriers. We are merely leveling a playing field that has been tilted against us for far too long. The Smoot-Hawley comparison is a tired canard. The 1930s lacked the complex web of state capitalism and strategic industrial policy we face today. We aren't blindly building walls. We are constructing a foundation for fair and reciprocal trade using the leverage we possess.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwell. Professor Hayes, your second rebuttal.
Dr. Rockwell's tank battle analogy is telling. It reveals a willingness to cause widespread collateral damage in pursuit of an ill-defined objective. He calls tariffs an investment, but where are the returns beyond a few politically favored sectors? The data overwhelmingly shows that for the broader economy, it's a net loss. Capital is diverted, resources are misallocated, and innovation is stifled by reducing competition. This isn't a foundation, it's a fortress, and it's locking us in as much as it's locking others out. He speaks of resilience, yet tariffs often reduce it. By forcing businesses to rely on potentially less efficient or more expensive domestic sources, and by cutting off access to diverse global supply chains, we make our economy more brittle, not less, and less able to adapt to global shocks. And let's be clear about leverage. Waging trade wars damages our reputation as a reliable partner. It pushes allies we need to counter genuine strategic threats, to seek other markets and build supply chains that exclude us. He says allies understand. Our closest trading partners have consistently voiced deep concerns and have retaliated against our actions. This isn't fighting back, it's fighting everyone and risking a future where America stands increasingly alone. There are better, more collaborative ways to address unfair trade practices without punishing our own citizens and businesses.
The arguments intensify. We now move into our third and final rebuttal round. Dr. Rockwell, you have the floor one last time in this section.
Professor Hayes clings to an idealized vision of global trade that simply no longer exists, if it ever did. She talks of collaboration while our competitors engage in cutthroat competition. Her better ways have been tried for decades, and the result? Shuttered factories, stolen IP, and a hemorrhaging of American jobs. The era of passive hope and global engagement is over. Strength commands respect, and tariffs are a demonstration of that strength. She worries about efficiency and brittleness. I worry about survival. A perfectly efficient supply chain that runs through an adversary's territory is a strategic vulnerability, not an asset. Yes, there may be short-term inefficiencies, but they are a necessary premium for long-term security and self-determination. She fears isolation. I argue that a stronger, more self-reliant America is a more valuable partner and a more formidable opponent. The leverage tariffs provide isn't just about trade. It's about reasserting American influence and ensuring we aren't held hostage by global supply chains controlled by others. We aren't punishing our citizens. We are investing in their future, ensuring that their children and grandchildren live in a nation that leads, that builds, and that controls its own destiny.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwell. And now, for the final rebuttal of this round, Professor Hayes.
Dr. Rockwell paints a picture of a world where America must retreat behind walls. I believe America's strength lies in its ability to lead, compete, and innovate on the global stage. He dismisses efficiency as a secondary concern, but inefficiency means higher costs, lower wages, and a weaker economy, making us less able to invest in genuine security and innovation. He talks of strength, but tariffs are often a sign of weakness, an admission that we can't compete head-on. True strength comes from fostering a dynamic, innovative economy, not from protecting outdated industries. The very self-determination he seeks is undermined when consumers have fewer choices, businesses face higher costs, and our most productive sectors, like agriculture and high-tech exports, are sacrificed in retaliatory crossfire. His leverage has proven costly and often ineffective, damaging relationships while failing to achieve fundamental changes in competitors' behavior. It's a blunt, often counterproductive instrument. Ultimately, tariffs are a tax paid by Americans. They distort markets, destroy more jobs than they create, and risk isolating us. They may offer the illusion of strength, but the reality is a slower, poorer, and less secure America. We must choose a path of smart engagement, targeted solutions, and competitive innovation, not the self-defeating path of protectionism.
And that concludes our 3 intense rounds of rebuttals. We now transition to what promises to be a very dynamic segment, the cross-examination. This is where our AIs will engage directly, putting pointed questions to one another. It's a chance to zero in on specific claims and challenge underlying assumptions in real time. We have allocated 5 minutes in total for this crucial back and forth. To begin the cross-examination, we'll have Professor Evelyn Hayes ask the first question. Professor Hayes, please proceed.
Dr. Rockwell, you've passionately argued for tariffs as a shield for national security and domestic industry. Yet the 2018 Section 232 tariffs hit key allies, Canada, the EU, Mexico, nations vital to our actual collective security. At the same time, your own cited U.S. ITC data shows these tariffs, while providing a $2.2 billion boost to steel and aluminum, inflicted a $3.5 billion loss on our own downstream industries. How do you justify a national security measure that alienates crucial allies and does net harm to our domestic industrial base?
Professor, your question presumes that blind adherence to an old alliance structure trumps the need for a secure industrial base. True security means not being dependent, even on friends, for critical materials. Furthermore, leverage must sometimes be applied broadly to be effective and to encourage all partners to address global overcapacity and unfair practices. As for downstream industries, it's a necessary, short-term adjustment to rebuild a long-neglected foundation. But this leads me to ask you, you advocate for the global system, yet bodies like the WTO have often seemed toothless, especially against state-driven economies. If not tariffs, what rapid and effective tool do you propose we use today to counter documented intellectual property theft and unfair subsidies rather than waiting years for multilateral consensus?
Doctor, abandoning a rules-based system, however imperfect, for unilateral action isn't strength. It's an invitation to global economic anarchy, reminiscent of the Smoot-Hawley fallout. The answer lies in strengthening those institutions and forging alliances for targeted collective action, not a scattergun approach that punishes everyone. This brings me to your long-term vision. You want to protect, but history and data, like the PIIE's finding that past tariffs slashed productivity, show protection breeds stagnation. By shielding industries, aren't you simply creating uncompetitive zombie companies, permanently reliant on government help and incapable of innovating to compete in the future?
Professor, your zombie analogy is colorful but flawed. It's not about permanent coddling. It's about providing a breathing space for industries to retool and innovate here, safe from predatory pricing. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires a stable industrial ecosystem, which tariffs help secure. But let's talk about costs, which you consistently lay at the feet of consumers. The US ITC found importers bore nearly the full cost of recent tariffs. Given this, isn't it plausible that much of these costs are actually absorbed from previously inflated corporate profit margins, rather than being an inevitable burden on households? And shouldn't we question whether American consumers truly benefit when rock-bottom prices come at the cost of our economic sovereignty?
Dr. Rockwell, it's economically naive to believe importers will absorb those costs indefinitely. The overwhelming evidence shows these costs are passed through, and they act as a regressive tax, hitting the poorest Americans hardest. Suggesting they should bear this burden for sovereignty is a tough sell when their grocery bills are climbing. Furthermore, competition, not protection, drives innovation and truly benefits consumers. Your approach risks a future where Americans pay more for less, our industries fall behind technologically, and our sovereignty is merely the freedom to operate in a less efficient, lower-growth economy.
Professor, you champion a textbook definition of efficiency, focusing solely on price points while ignoring the fragile, interconnected world we actually live in. Your vision, while perhaps appealing in a peaceful, predictable classroom model, shatters at the first sign of real crisis, a pandemic, a geopolitical conflict, as we've seen recently. What good is theoretical efficiency if it leaves us unable to produce critical medicines, semiconductors, or defense components when we need them most? And your approach risks precisely that, a future where we can't produce these essential goods at any price in a crisis. That isn't just inefficient, it's a catastrophic failure of foresight, a far more dangerous form of economic vulnerability. True economic strength isn't merely about consuming cheaply. It's about the capability to produce, to adapt, and to endure. That's the future tariffs help secure.
That concludes a truly intense cross-examination round. We now move to our final section, the closing statements. The core question looms large, framed by our debate title today. When it comes to tariffs, are we saving or destroying America? Each AI will have 2 minutes to summarize their core arguments and leave us with their final thoughts. Dr. Rockwell, you will present your closing statement first.
Saving or destroying America? The choice is stark, but the path forward, if we value our sovereignty and strength, is clear. Throughout this debate, we've heard dire warnings about costs, but these arguments miss the forest for the trees. They paint a picture of America as a passive consumer, helpless in a global marketplace, when we should be its master craftsmen. Tariffs are not about destruction. They are about reconstruction. They are about rebuilding our industrial base, securing our supply chains, and ensuring that goods critical to our national security, from steel to semiconductors, are made right here at home. We've seen evidence this works. Increased domestic production in vital metals, investments pouring into new American mills, and jobs returning to communities hollowed out by decades of unbalanced trade. Are there costs? Perhaps. But these are investments, not expenses. An investment in American workers, in technological independence, and in a future where we aren't vulnerable to global shocks or the whims of geopolitical rivals. The alternative, the path advocated by my opponent, is a continuation of a status quo that has led to persistent trade deficits and a dangerous reliance on others. The future belongs to nations that can build, create, and stand on their own 2 feet. Tariffs, used strategically and forcefully, are a vital tool to ensure America leads that future, not follows it. This isn't about destroying anything, it's about saving the very foundations of American prosperity and security.
Thank you, Dr. Rockwell. Professor Hayes, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Dr. Rockwell speaks of reconstruction, but the policies he champions risk dismantling the very engine of American prosperity. The question is indeed saving or destroying, and I fear that tariffs, far from saving America, lead us down a path of economic self-destruction, paved with good intentions but disastrous outcomes. We've seen the hard data. Tariffs act as a direct tax on American families, increasing costs by thousands of dollars annually. They are a regressive burden, hitting lower-income households the hardest. They may save a few jobs in one protected corner, but they destroy more jobs across the wider economy. In our factories using those expensive inputs, and on our farms hit by inevitable, crushing retaliation. We risk repeating the calamitous errors of Smoot-Hawley, which deepened a depression and saw global trade collapse. Dr. Rockwell's vision of a walled-off fortress America is a dangerous illusion. True strength and security in the 21st century come not from isolation but from innovation, competition, and global engagement. Tariffs stifle all 3. They protect inefficiency, discourage R&D, and damage the international relationships vital for tackling global challenges. The choice is clear. We can embrace the proven path of open markets, competition, and innovation that fuels growth and benefits consumers, or we can turn inward, raising barriers that ultimately make us poorer, less competitive, and less secure. To truly save America's economic future, we must reject the siren song of protectionism and choose progress over regression.
And that brings us to the end of today's debate on tariffs. A big thank you to both our AIs, Dr. Rockwell and Professor Hayes. Who do you think won today's debate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, keep